Welcome to Clay ShareCon, day 5. We have a Q&A session planned for you with Drew Seymour from Clayscapes Pottery. He is going to join us and answer all of the questions you have about glazing and firing and kilns. So anything to do with that, you're welcome to ask him. And we're going to be here for 45 minutes with Drew. And I know every time we do this, we do not get to everybody's questions, and I'm going to apologize in advance. There's always so many questions, we just can't get to them all, but we will do our best to get to as many as we can. All right, let's go check in with Drew. Hey, Drew, how's it going?
Hey, everybody, going pretty well here. Just braving the snow to get down here and get this Q&A started for you guys. So we've got all kinds of stuff that you guys have learned over the course of this last week, and I'm here to figure out any oddball questions you have. If you have questions about, I've got glazes. If you want to see any of the glazes, I got these.
Oh wait, you fired the kiln with the test glazes you did. You and your dad glazed the other day.
Yes.
Are you going to share those?
Yeah, I can share those. We can do those first if you want. Let me get the plate because I'm going to start over there. The plate's behind this.
Oh, yes, I do want to see these glazes.
So the plate, this is the cream over the nutmeg, and it's,
Yeah, the cream really obscured the nutmeg a lot, and there's not a lot of movement going on.
But this was also fired horizontally, so it didn't really have a chance to run or move. So I think that maybe the cream would have done a little bit better job in a vertical situation. This is my favorite. This is the one we did the nutmeg with the iron wash.
Yeah, that's nice.
Let's see if the light's causing an issue. It's like kind of a glare. So there's that one. That's the nutmeg with the iron wash on the red clay. We did some chun over the ultraviolet. So this is the chun.
Oh, yes, very nice.
I like it. It's
I like it a lot.
More of a subtle combination, and they go really well together. So
I knew they would. Yeah, that's so good.
And there's some like really interesting detail in the bottom of the drip layer there. So that's a really good combo. We also did cream over the ultraviolet. You can see just where they touch, you get this little hint of combo here. Probably next time I do this combo, you can see like a nice strip. I'd overlap it a little more. But as this is my first go around with it, I wanted to be a little more cautious. So there's that one. What else did we do? We did coastal blue over ultraviolet.
Oh yeah.
And so that was the interesting one. That was the one where I took my hand and just kind of like dripped down on it, and it. Oh, look at that swirl there. Let's see here. So that's a good combo. The nutmeg over the charcoal.
Oh, interesting. It went kind of greenish, didn't it?
It did. It's very weird. I did not expect. I had to go back and watch the video because I thought this was cream over charcoal, but it's nutmeg over the charcoal.
Yeah, so I think if you left bare clay on the top and done charcoal on the bottom and just had like a band of nutmeg on the top, and that way you'd get the look of the nutmeg, and then you'd have the charcoal and everything, so it would.
Yes, I like that idea. We've got coastal blue over the black iron. It did.
Oh, that just went glossy. Yeah, it didn't do much anything.
Do what I thought it was going to do.
Yeah.
Besides run. And I think that was we did a black copper bowl, just one coat. So it's got that nice black.
Yeah. So one coat, when it's thin, the black copper goes like the black with bits of copper. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and so this is, when we were
That's
showing
one
off
thin
that
coat
technique,
too.
Yeah, when we were showing off that technique, and we did the one coat on this, and then when you when you pull it upright, and we talk about the sheeting giving you a second coat, we can actually see that in action right there. You know, when I flipped this upright and we had a little drip on the rim there that created a second coat, we got color development. And so that's what we talked about.
So I'm just going to answer a question. These are all Clayscapes glazes for everybody who's watching. Every single one of the glazes Drew is showing right now are Clayscapes glazes.
Clayscapes glazes. You can get, I think the promo we're running, so you buy $100 or less, you get a 20% discount with the 20 off promo. And then if you buy more than $100 worth of product, you get free shipping.
In the US.
Yes.
The free shipping's in the US. Outside of the US, you'll get the 20.
The 20%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. We got a mass of questions.
Yeah, I bet.
So we're just going to start, and I'm moderating these comments on 3 separate social media streams. So there's a lot of questions. Let's just start with this one. How should I load sculptures in a kiln with mugs and things? Should they be on the top or on the bottom? They're 13 inches tall in a Scott 1027.
13 inches tall in a Scott 1027. So what I would do is your bottom layer, you know, should always be 5-6 inches minimum. That way you get, you know, a nice layer of work on the bottom. You don't have a super dense load. Once you get above that 5-6 inch layer, you can load it however you want. But the easiest spot to load those is going to be in the top of the kiln. You know, the last 15 inches of your kiln, if you got a 13-inch piece, you know, the last 15 inches of your kiln, that's where you're going to want to load those larger sculptural pieces.
Fantastic.
Everything's fired to cone 6. Yes, these are all fired to a hot cone 6.
Is there chrome in the charcoal? Are you even going to tell that?
Not. The charcoal is
no chrome in the charcoal.
No chrome. It's just a.
You're not going to tell.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you. Sorry, I could tell you, but I'm not going to. It's totally food safe. There's no chrome. There's no manganese. There's no copper. There's no cobalt. None of that stuff.
And I see a question about how can I find the cost per firing on my Genesis controller. Drew actually showed how to do that in the broadcast the other day. He actually walks you through the steps and how to find it. So that was how to program offsets, segmented cooldowns, and firing. So go back and watch that because it's a little bit of a lengthy thing, and Drew's already covered it. And it's not that I don't think it's important. It's just he's already talked about it, and we have a bazillion questions. So folks want your Bisque schedule. Now, you shared that the other day, but you use the standard L&L Bisque schedule? Or do you have a different one?
So during the programming segment, I actually went through our custom Bisque program. It actually was up on screen when I was showing you how to program the custom in the custom program segment. But basically it is you heat your kiln up to 200 degrees, do a hold, that's your preheat, and then you go, you know, roughly 150 degrees to 200 an hour until you get up to about 1,000. And we're going to slow down to about 75 degrees an hour until you get to 1,600, where you can then, you know, speed it back up to until you get to the peak of your temperature. I did send an email over to Kevin with a link to that page, that L&L page that has that program. And so we can definitely get that over to you.
You will get that up.
Find it and put it in the chat.
That's the one that was the Bisque firing.
Yeah, I've actually got it saved right here. So if I control copy, and I'll just paste it in the chat.
Do have a great question. Could you talk about pinholing and blistering, the differences of each and how to fix it?
Yes. So pinholing has multiple sources, and blistering is typically just only outgassing. And so when we talk about pinholing and blistering, you can get either of these effects from outgassing, where the gas is leaving, you know, your solid clay is firing and those organic materials leave the clay as a gas. That can cause pinholing and blistering or bloating in your clay body, blistering in your glaze if your clay body bloats and there's glaze over it. things like that. Pinholing can also come from too heavy of an application of glaze. So if your glaze is too thick in the bucket, or if you have too many coats, you can get that bubbling pinholing effect. So, that's why we have that long glaze program, so that you guys can eliminate the outgassing side of the equation. And then if you are still getting pinholing or outgassing, you can address it as a glaze consistency thing.
So here's a good one. I bought my new Olympic kiln 2 years ago, and the manual says to prop the lid open for 2 hours. Does that take the place of doing a preheat?
You would do that in addition to your preheat. So if you don't have a downdraft vent and you are preheating your kiln, you can prop the lid or take the peepholes out. This is just a means of letting the moisture escape your kiln. You don't have to do it, but that's the way they did it back in the day.
Fantastic. So the question with the sculpture, got a follow-up question. Should she put a shelf on top above the sculptures, like a top before the lid?
I wouldn't. I can show you I have a load full of sculpture work that I can show you. Flip this around. Flippity flop. Look at those pots. So like this one here is bigger, so it's right on the bottom. But then these two over here, you can see there's a shelf under there. You want to get them up as high as you can in the kiln.
Fantastic. So do you have a white base glaze that someone could add mason stains to or oxides to make their own custom glaze?
Yes. You can do that with any white glaze, really. So it's best if you have a powdered glaze. So if your glaze is already in the dry format, that's where you're going to get the best results. But yeah, you could use the cream, you could use the lake effect white, the bright white, any of those, the crystal clear, any of those will work as a nice base formula for making your own colors. We've done that, all of our Celadon glazes, they're the crystal clear base, and so all of the Brooklyn line, I believe, are the crystal clear base. And then they have colorants and other additives to give different effects. But yeah, that's totally doable. Any clear or white glaze is good for that.
Here's a glaze question. Can one use Celadon glazes with low fire clay? If not, what can be used as a replacement? Well, Amico makes a low fire Celadon glaze.
They do. Their entire LG series or F series glazes are all transparent to semi-transparent glazes that would be good for that low fire. You're not going to want to interchange like a cone 6 Celadon and fire it to low temperature. It's going to come out matte and grody looking. And
then another question, how do you figure out what size kiln your electrical system can take? I know we talked about this. We talked about on your budget. It was your electrical budget, and we talked about that a lot. But could you give a brief?
Typically, your house, where you live, your residence, at least in the U.S., it's going to run on 240 volt power, and you're going to have a certain level of electrical service, right? Meaning your house has 100 amp service or 200 amp service. That means that there's 200 amps available as your piece of the pie, and all of your electrical systems in your house take up a piece of that pie. And so you need to find out, well, do you have enough of that left over when it's all said and done to put a kiln in? And based on the size of the kiln you want, it's going to require a certain amount of amps for a breaker. So a 7 cubic foot kiln, just like the one you have, that is going to require a 60 amp breaker. So you need to have 60 amps available to run that kiln. If you move down to a smaller size kiln and you get a 30 amp breaker, you still may need, an electrician to come in and run wire and an outlet, but, it's only going to use 30 of those amps instead. And so, it just depends. If you live in an older house that only has, less service, getting a kiln in there can be tricky.
So what are the benefits or downsides to a downdraft vent?
Well, the benefits definitely, in my opinion, outweigh. Can I even think of like a downside? I mean, so they vent all of the gas straight out of the kiln so that it's never getting in the air of your space. It's going to prolong the life of your elements. It's going to prolong the life of the casing, the metal casing. All of your hinge components are going to last longer. You're going to have a more even firing. You got to cut a hole in the side of a window or a wall. I mean, that's a downside. You know, if you can't do that, like if you rent in a space where you're not allowed to do it, like you can't make changes, you can't have a downdraft kiln vent. Like, or you could, and I've done this in schools where you take the downdraft kiln vent and instead of putting it through a hole in the wall to vent outside, you would put it in and ventilate it to the existing ventilation system. But I can't think of any downsides, honestly, besides maybe cost.
Fantastic. All right. So a bit off topic, but the Raku clay I bought from Clayscapes for the Raku workshop, will that be black when it's fired to cone 6? I'm trying to use it up.
No, it will be like off-white, tannish, not really tan. It's going to be like an off-white. It won't be vitrified. But you can do anything to Raku clay and it will pretty much be good. We fire, I want to say, is any of this Raku clay? Some of my dad's wood fire stuff up here is Raku clay and it's been fired to like cone 12 in a wood kiln. And it's fine,
So here's a question. Jess has said her nutmeg and black copper dipping glazes do well when brushed. How many brushed coats would you suggest? Should I add Darvan 7 or 811 to your charcoal or ultraviolet to brush them?
So no, you would not add Darvan to them. Darvan is something that you would typically add to like a casting slip. If you wanted to add like a brushing medium, we have a brushing medium that you can buy to add to them. The black copper, I would do, this was black copper brushed.
Yeah.
And it was like, I did 2 coats on the bottom and 3 coats on the top. Then the nutmeg, I would probably only brush once or twice, depending on the level of orange that you're looking for. Because it's a Shino, it will go from like an orange to a little glossier tannish cream color. You can see where there's like drips. I like the nutmeg. I like this. So I would probably do one coat of nutmeg.
Also, it depends, are these, if she's buying the dippable glazes and brushing, I guess she's going to brush the dippable glaze.
Yeah. I would still only do one coat of that.
I did on my sample, which I've shown of black copper, that's just 1 coat. I think mine must have been thicker than you were saying. And my nutmeg's just 1 coat too. But I'll show those at the end.
Those I would go with 1 coat. The charcoal with 1 coat. I would do an ultraviolet as 2 or 3 coats. To get that high gloss, because there's a difference. Let's see here, ultraviolet. We can see the difference on this extruded piece where it's a little thinner, right? And then this piece here. Here's another interesting thing.
Yeah, that is the same glaze.
This was in the test kiln. This was in the production kiln, like the big kiln. So like when we get into glaze chemistry and we talk about the difference between having a test kiln and a bigger kiln, like test kiln gets you in the ballpark and then you take it the rest of the way with the big kiln.
So we have a question. What's the gorgeous glaze on the vase? That's on the vase on the second shelf, but I see a couple gorgeous vases on the second shelf. So, I mean, is it that one? I don't know.
This is coastal blue over Clinton pottery red. I need an example of Chun over Clinton pottery red. So if you just imagine like more of this color in here. The chun.
I like it better, but
great.
that's, yeah, I'm a little biased.
Oh, the chun over the ultraviolets. Forgot about that one. I've got it over on my Jess mug shelf here. So this is the Jess's chun over the ultraviolet. I'm saying it was a little bit more of a subtle glaze. I don't have these lights like in the right place at all, do I? But yeah, so this is the chun over the ultraviolet, and it does some pretty cool things. I'm digging it.
Yeah, I like it. It looks nice.
Yeah.
It's very nice. It's very pretty. So let's see. I've got a bazillion questions. Will a kiln with a vent in the basement still kick out bad fumes in the space?
No. I mean, so the downdraft kiln vent is only gonna vent whatever's in the kiln. So like it's not going to vent the space around the kiln. If you had a hood vent, that would do it. There's other people that, you know, if you want, I mean, you could take like a really powerful box fan and stick it in a window and just blow all the air. As long as you get enough CFM to cycle the air a certain amount of times per hour, you can vent your room however you'd like. The downdraft kiln vents, the vents that attach directly to the kiln, they're only rated to vent like a 10 to 20 cubic foot kiln.
So not the whole room.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little bit of dipping cream left, not enough to actually dip with. Can I brush it on? If so, how many coats should I brush?
You could probably brush it on. I would do one coat. Or, I mean, I would put it in the squeeze bottle, like a old ketchup bottle, or, a squeeze bottle, and then have it to shake up and use as an accent where you like, that's how I, sometimes do these types of things, with a squeeze bottle and just squirt it around. This is the
very cool
spearmint over the black copper. This is the lake blue over the black copper. But yeah, I mean, I would just use it as a sport bottle.
Can you mix dipping glazes and brushing glazes on the same piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you can. I have a lot of customers that will mix their Amico and their Mako and their clayscapes and do all sorts of things, stroke and coats over and under different things. There's no limit to the combinations that you can do.
So what is the advice on using cookies? Is it ever possible to glaze the bottom or close to the bottom and then prop it up enough to not drip at mid-fire? Our community kiln has a big problem with dripping.
So dripping wise, we have a big problem here in the community studio as well. And it's all boils down to teaching good glazing techniques. And so when we have the shelves all loaded up, this is all the work that's ready to go in the kiln. We have a pots in trouble or a naughty pots shelf, and anything that looks like it's going to run real bad, or looks like it's applied to a spot where it's going to stick, we set aside. And that's not something that gets everything, but we keep all of our broken kiln shelves. And then if it looks suspect, we stick it on a kiln shelf. And then because it's a student, if it's a student piece and it drips on the broken piece of kiln shelf instead. We don't do cookies here.
People want to know what the bright blue vase, the bluish green one on the shelf behind you is. Not the one with the Clinton pottery red, the other one. Yeah, everybody wants to see that one. That's
yeah. This is something. Well, I'm a little punch drunk. This is our shadow blue on porcelain. Okay. The technique that's used here is water etching. So this is all like a raised area. All these textures are raised, and the negative space is recessed. And then just shadow blue.
Shadow blue is an amazing glaze. It's one of my favorite Clayscapes glazes. That's not one of mine. And it looks great with cream on top of it. It just is so nice. And for texture, it's just the best. Can you have too much weight when loading a kiln?
You have too much weight when building a kiln?
Loading.
When loading a kiln?
Like maybe on a shelf?
I mean, I'm sure there is a weight limit, but I have yet to find it. I have customers that will fire, there's a piece sitting there right here. I mean, this is like a 75-pound piece. Right?
Solid clay?
They're like big, thick coils.
Big fat coils. Has it been fired already?
No.
Oh, so okay. Did you make that?
My dad made it.
Your dad made it.
There's another there's a piece behind it. It's going to be a bird bath. And then there's
you want it to be heavy.
A bowl. This is the bowl form. So this will go on top.
Nice. Go Dad. So can you go over the difference?
Got to lift them all.
Oh, you do. So
yeah, he can't
lift right now. No.
Well, no, I can't either. But in general, he shouldn't be lifting them. So.
True. So will you go over the difference between a brush on and a dipping glaze? Can you turn one into another?
So yeah, you can always. A commercially available brush on glaze has ingredients added like gum to slow down the drying process. And they have other ingredients that will make the glaze stretchier, more plastic, so that it will spread nicer. Versus a dipping glaze typically doesn't have those additives added in the quantities that you need, right? Like a good dipping glaze is still going to have some bentonite in it, depending on the clay content, to keep everything in suspension. But it's not going to have as much gum or brushing medium in it as like a brushing glaze, because that glaze needs to be taken down a peg as far as how fast it slows, how slow it dries. And so, you can always take a brushing glaze and brush it on. You just need to be aware of your application. Or you can add brushing medium and take a little bit of your dipping glaze out, put it in a little jar, 7 grams of brushing medium, and then good to go.
So can you place low fire glazed pieces in a cone 6 bisque with bisque pieces in the same load? So you got low fire glazed, low fire bisque pieces going to the same temperature. Is it okay to put them both in the same kiln?
Yeah. I mean, the maximum temperature for bisque is about the same as your low fire glaze pieces. So, in a situation where you've got cone 6 work that you're bisquing, but you also have some low fire projects that, maybe you had some friends over or some grandkids over and they did some low fire stuff. You can put that stuff glazed in with the bisque and it'll be fine. You just stack it like a glaze instead of a bisque around those pots. But that's just totally acceptable. We've done it in the past. It's actually a really good way around it. So
what's the benefit and downside of a kiln that fires to cone 5-ish that operates on a 110?
So the kilns, some of the doll kilns that L&L sells, they used to all be rated to cone 10. Those little guys that fire on the 110 volt outlet, they will make it to cone 10 a few times, but you're going to have to do repair work on them constantly. So they took that cone 10 rating away from them. They're only rated to cone 5 or 6 now. You can fire them to cone 5, 6. Again, you're not going to get as many firings out of those because you're firing them to their maximum rating. But there's no, as long as you're okay with swapping elements, you're fine. I found that those kilns, we had a customer that was using them specifically for cone 10 firing, and they got about 15 to 20 firings out of them before they had to replace their elements. And so it's just, they that type of power, the resistance on the elements, you know, all of those, you know, variables combined equal, they just tear through parts, which is why they're rated to lower temps now. And which is why you want something rated to a higher temperature than you're going to use it at. Because if you use it at its maximum capability all the time, it's going to need a lot more repair work.
So if you use a Raku clay body, apply a food safe glaze and fire to cone 5-6, is it food safe?
Technically, no. It's not, and this is where we get into the whole food safety versus
food appropriate versus
thing,
food
right?
safe.
Like, is it food safe? There's nothing dangerous about it. It's just going to have a hard time holding water. And if water can pass through it, germs, bacteria, those types of things can pass through it. So if you're going to use it for, you know, food purposes, I would just test how it holds its moisture. Make sure that it's solid enough. Otherwise, you're going to be carrying around a dirty mug.
A lot of Raku clays actually can go almost to cone 10.
Yeah.
So that's when they start to vitrify. Yeah.
In order to get the Raku clay to be so robust to withstand that thermal shock that it needs to withstand, it needs to be like a really fire clay heavy clay body, and those clay bodies fire to higher temps.
If you do you have a recipe for wadding?
For wadding, I want to say it's like, I want to say we make it and it's like 30% EPK, 33% EPK, 33% alumina hydrate, 33% sawdust is what we do.
You put sawdust in yours.
Yeah. I don't know why. I'm not part of the wood firing side of things too much anymore. But I like sawdust in it.
So I have a super easy one. It's 1 part EPK, 1 part alumina hydrate. So half and half. And it's the same thing I make my kiln wash. That's my kiln wash too.
50-50 EPK alumina.
Yeah. Thin it down for kiln wash. Make it less water and make your wads from it. It works great. All right. So what is on the mug you're drinking out of? Everybody wants to see your mug.
Oh, this is wood fired.
Showing your mug.
Big old 30 ounce. It's like 32 ounce mug. Wood fired. Little drawing of a dragon on it. Big in my head.
Is there any reason you shouldn't pour on a brush on glaze that you can think of?
Efficiency. You're going to lose a lot more glaze doing that than if you were to brush it on. You know, if you start pouring those glazes, they're going to be way too thick, you know, for pouring. They're not really developed for that. If you're going to pour it, I would thin it down, if I'm being honest. And then you have to do multiple coats. And so when you're talking about brushing glazes, they're more expensive, you know, and so you're better off buying a glaze in a bulk quantity that you'll be able to pour rather than trying to pour a brushing glaze, because you'll just pour it all out.
Do you have any distributors in Europe for glaze?
I don't. Blue Matchbox and Pot Clays are in the UK. Pot Clays, I know, is I want to say they're like they have other distributors in the EU, but they've only gotten one shipment from us, and they're looking at placing a reorder in April, I think. They have a container leaving the States in April. So I don't know about the EU. I would definitely talk to Pot Clays in the UK. They're going to be your best source of getting our glazes into the EU, probably. Just because they already have those trade routes established.
If you buy a bag of the dipping glaze, can you make a portion of it instead of the whole bag?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can make whatever you want. I know somebody that was saying that they don't use, when they bought our brushing glazes, they didn't mix the whole jar. they would pour out a little bit, almost like in a pallet, add the water, mix it up with their brush, and use it like that, rather than mixing the whole jar.
All right. So back to the firing a low fire bisque with a low fire glaze at the same time, you don't have any issues with off gassing affecting the glazed pieces?
No, for once firing, I was looking at the comments. What did you?
What are you doing? You pay attention. So,
I'm sorry.
So the question that we had, the person wants to do a low fire bisque at the same time they're doing a low fire glaze, having both pieces in. And the concern is off gassing from the bisque affecting the glaze.
No, that won't happen, especially if your kiln is vented. You know, that's just gonna get scooped right out. The off gassing only affects the pot when it's coming out of it, right? Like this pot off gassing isn't going to affect this pot in 99% of circumstances. Okay. Now, I did just find out that this pot, for example, when this pot outgasses, it will affect the pot next to it. The ingredients that we use to get this nice black, they outgas in a way that if it was next to, say, something white or something with tin in it, it may cause it to atomize onto that piece. But
my Oribe also does that. So if anybody has my Oribe green glaze that they get from Clayscapes, if you put that next to a beautiful white porcelain piece, you're going to have like some nice transfer happening on your white piece.
And you can make it, you can make it, you can do it on purpose. You know, you could do something like this. You see how we've got this circle of cuppiness here. You know, if we knew that this was going to off gas and affect the things around it, and we, you know, design it so that we glaze them in a way to do that intentionally, you can get some really awesome stuff going on there.
So back to the bisque glaze at the same time, what speed would you do?
I would still do a slow custom bisque, you know. So we're gonna when we fire that bisque, that mixed bisque glaze load, we want to pander to the lowest common denominator there, and any off-gassing issues that you don't solve in the bisque will come out in the glaze. So we really want to make sure that that bisque firing is perfect for all of that cone 6 bisqueware, because the glaze is going to be fine. You're not going to, you know, low fire glaze, we're not worried about outgassing too much there.
So do you fire low fired pieces? And if so, what temperature do you bisque fire the low fire pieces to?
So we don't do low fire firing here anymore, just because it got to be a little confusing. And when you have 125 students, trying to figure out which ones really are supposed to go in which kiln when you're firing multiple temperatures can be problematic. In your home studio, what I recommend, if you have a low fire clay body and a high fire clay body, is you need to make a differentiation between what those are. And so usually if you are using, let's say, a low fire terracotta, I would say make sure that all of your cone 6 stoneware is white. That way you can say any pots that have iron in them that are red pottery when they're bisqued, I know that those are low fire. And anything that's white or tan, I know is going to be high fire, or vice versa. You can get low fire white clay. And then cone 6, you'd use the darker clays, the iron bearing clays. That's one way you can, you know, differentiate between your clay bodies so you never make a mix up. But when you're, you know, if you wanted to differentiate between a bisque fire and a glaze fire at low temp, bisque, you know, you could bisque to 06 and glaze to 04. You could bisque to 04 and glaze to 06. Separating those cones would make it so that you don't ever get a mix up between like the 06 and cone 6 cones. So just being aware of what you're programming your kiln to. you don't accidentally hit 6 instead of 0.6, because that's going to be a problem.
So I have a very old dipping glaze. How do I rehydrate it?
Oh, man, just add water. I mean, realistically, if it's old, it's probably settled into a big old cake of solid glaze matter in the bottom of the bucket. I would probably smash that up with a chisel or something first, and then add some water. The other thing that you can do is if you add water to the top of it, I would use one of these. Ta-da! Because this, you can go into the water and the clay is going to be really hard and sticking to itself. And this here, you can cut through it and it'll cut big, long rivets, big, long trenches through the glaze. It'll make mixing it up a lot easier.
So what is and where do I get the brushing medium for adding to the dipping glaze? I can't find it on your website.
Uh-oh.
Where is it?
Well, let's have a look.
It should be there. They sell it at Clayscapes Pottery.
Shop. So if I go to the shop, which is new, and I go to materials, raw materials, Barnard, bentonite, bone ash, borax, brushing medium. So it is under the raw materials section, and it's called brushing medium. It's right there, $17.73 a pound, and you use 7 grams of brushing medium for 1 pound of dry glaze.
So this is a follow-up for that. What if you have the dipping version already reconstituted in water and you want to add the brushing medium to it?
That's
How
a
do
little
you do
more
that?
complicated. You can't just, I mean, you can, but you don't want to take just pure dry brushing medium and add it to a liquid glaze. Because what's going to happen is those brushing medium particles, that gum, that CMC, when they hit the water and it moisturizes it, they're going to clump together like a ball and settle. And so what you need to do is you actually need to take your brushing medium and add it to some warm water, some nice warm water, and you mix it up until it goes into a solution. And then you add that into your glaze, your wet glaze.
Can I bisque fire earthenware and stoneware in the same firing?
Absolutely.
Yay. Here's a question. Also, if folks want to see the shelf that you had with the mugs on it, again, the kiln shelf, and what size that is.
Oh, yeah, sure. This shelf right here is a 15-inch kiln shelf that would go in a L&L E18S or T, any of the Scott 818s. That kiln shelf there, they're nice and light. These are the high alumina kiln shelves, so they're rated to a high temperature. They don't warp or crack or anything like that.
And we are over by, oh no, we still got another minute. Okay.
Ooh, we got a minute.
I'm a little nervous. Well, we're going over because we started late. And so folks are saying they can't find elements or kiln shelves on your site either.
Yes,
Where are
no,
they?
you can't. So I don't put kiln shelves on the website because they break when you ship them.
So you don't ship the kiln shelves. You got to go in.
We typically don't ship them. If I have to ship 1 or 2 kiln shelves, it takes me about a half an hour to pack them and send them. And I can do that, but we don't put it up on the website because then I've had people try and buy multiple kiln shelves and have them ship, and it's a whole thing. Elements, just like kilns, there are so many different versions of parts for different kilns and things like that, if you want parts, you got to call, just because I want to make sure that you get the right ones. So
15 seconds. Can we answer another question? I've got 10 different gallons of low fire glaze that are badly hard panned and they froze. What do I do to use them?
You're gonna have to cut them out of so I would get 5-gallon buckets and I would cut your gallon jugs and get rid of the plastic, dump them in. You're going to have to smash them up. You're going to have to add water. You're going to have to mix them. It's going to be intensive, but that's a lot of glaze. And if you want to make sure you're using it, then you got to do the work.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Drew. Awesome as always. Sadly, we can never get to all the questions. Drew and I have had this conversation many times about the glaze and kiln Q&A sessions we do. And we always say that we think we could start one and it would go for 24 hours and we still would get questions. Like people just,
Probably.
One day we will do a marathon broadcast and just see how long we go before everybody leaves.
We'll do like a monthly Q&A.
We should. All right, Drew.
Thanks a bunch. Thanks. All right, I'm on. They cut you off. Kevin cut you off, Drew. I'm sorry. He left you. And Drew's like, thanks, everybody. And he's like, back to me. Huge thank you to the folks at Clayscapes Pottery for being part of ClayShareCon this year, for sponsoring giveaways, having all the amazing discounts on so many products and all the demos and tutorials and being a wealth of information. If you have more questions, you can always email Drew. That is andrew@clayscapespottery.com. Or you can go to the Clayscapes Pottery website and you can contact anybody you want there. All right, so we're going to take a little tiny break because I got to get set up. I'm doing a luster demo next. It's the last demo of ClayShareCon. I'm kind of sad about it, but it has to end because all good things do. All right, we'll be back at 3:30.